I don't know how often you need to present. I have experience presenting in front of 5 people, and sometimes presenting in front of 5 people can be more challenging than presenting in front of 500 people. I don't know what your experience is, so feel free to, I don't know, comment or ask a question, and if that relates to what we're talking about, then I'm going to answer as well. What is very common with most non-native speakers, and well, when they come to me and when they apply for a public speaking course, they tell me they don't have a problem. They only have one little problem, which is they don't know enough words in the English language, and therefore they cannot express everything they need to express in business because they lack vocabulary. And every time we start having deeper conversations, we both realize that's not really the whole truth. It's not about the words. And I want to share with you what I see with a lot of people who come to request participation in my public speaking course, or those people that come because they need help in preparing their presentations, very important presentations, strategic presentations in front of investors, in front of clients, in front of foreign colleagues. People are, in the first place, afraid of people, and they're afraid of themselves as well. It's very important that people start feeling comfortable with their own image and with their own voice. Everybody, like I'm telling you, 100%, everybody says they hate their voice when they hear it recorded. Everybody says they hate themselves when I record them on the camera. And they look at the recording and they go like, no, that's not me. Can you please delete that? When they hear their voice, they go like, that's not my voice. I hate my voice so much. And that's a real problem. I used to have the same impression of myself, and I used to hate it. It was really hard to accept that this is me, because, you know, when you're used to seeing yourself every day in the mirror, you're used to seeing one and the same image. You know, you always have the same light in the bathroom, and you always know what filter to apply and which angle is the best to take the selfie. So you are used to the image of yourself. However, when other people look at you, they don't apply any filters, and they might look at you when it's dark. And you know, when friends take random pictures of you when you're not prepared to be photographed, and then they send you these pictures and you tell them, can you please delete them? I look ugly in these pictures. You don't like them, but it's still you. It's also you. It's just a different angle, and it's just a different side of you, but it's still you. It's important to accept all the sides of you before you even go and talk in front of other people. Otherwise, you're just going to be afraid that somebody is going to see another side of you that you probably haven't accepted yet. And when people point out at what they see, and you cannot control what people see, so when people point at that, you might feel frustrated, you might feel disappointed, you might feel lost, and you might feel like you don't know what to say or how to reply. You can never control what people will see when they look at you. Everybody sees what they're able to see. But what you can control is your reaction to that. And when you accept yourself, it helps a lot. Therefore, I record people a lot in my at my public speaking course, and they go home with a lot of recordings, upload those recordings in a special folder so that they can track their own progress in the chronological order. It's really, really important to feel comfortable with yourself and to get used to your own image. This is my voice. This is what it sounds like. This is what I look like, and that's okay. That's just number one. And when they come, they say, I need more words. It's kind of true, but what is more important is that people don't feel confident. They also tell me I don't feel confident when I present in English because I am a superstar when I present in my first language. I present on a regular basis, and everybody just, you know, gives me a round of applause every time I'm finished, and everybody loves me when I present. However, when I need to present the same stuff in the English language, because I cannot express myself at the same high level, and I'm talking about top managers, I'm talking about people who lead international teams. Of course, their level of their first language is amazingly high. They can they can manage all levels of complexity. They can explain anything in their first language. They can captivate their audiences. They can do a lot of things in front of big audiences or small audiences. They can persuade well, they can sell well. And when it comes to doing the same thing in the second language, they realize that their vocabulary is just not enough to express the same idea, to be as persuasive as they can be in their first language. And they have to go at least one level down. Most of the time, they need to go a couple levels down in English to make their speech more primitive, more simple. And they're very frustrated by this fact. They're frustrated that they don't have the same fluency, they don't have the same freedom, they don't feel as free as they do in their first language. And because they have to make their speech more primitive and more simple, they feel very frustrated. Not even because it's more simple, but because their reputation is at stake, because everybody, including their team and their boss, might think at this moment that they're not able to present at a high level. They're not able to find the right words. And everybody will notice that their English is actually not up to standard, that it's not as great as it's supposed to be for a person in their position. That's another thing that gets in the way a lot. First, not being able to accept their own image. Second of all, they think they're not confident because they don't know enough words, but in reality they're not very confident because they're afraid of opinions. They're afraid that everybody around them will judge them because their English language, the level of English is not up to standard. And what is standard? They define standard by the position they have. So if they're, let's say, the CFO, and they're managing an international team, their English must be the same as the level of a native speaker, or at least close to that level. And if it's not, they feel frustrated. So they set their own standards and then they get disappointed because they don't meet those standards. They don't live up to those standards. That's important to understand. Another thing that needs to be mentioned is people feel not very confident when they present in English because they don't hear a lot. That's another problem. People listen, well, they show that they're listening, but in fact they don't really hear much. And every single time I do this test, and yesterday we started a new group with public speaking for non-native speakers in business, I did this test again. Every time I do this test, amazing, smart, brilliant people always show the same results. People show you that they're listening, they pretend they're listening, but in fact they hear only about 80% of what you're saying. And I only work with those people whose English is already high enough. So they're not beginners, they're not pre-intermediate, they're not even intermediate, they're way their level is way higher than that. And still, when native speakers talk to them, they think they understand everything, but in fact, they do not hear every single word. They do not hear every little detail. They do not hear every number, every nuance. And everything they don't hear, they guess. So they start guessing, and instead of listening and understanding what a person is really saying, they listen, but then they add their own interpretation of what they think they have heard. That's a huge problem for non-native speakers, because they think they hear, they think they understand, until I ask them, can you please write down what the person said? And here we have a problem. I just heard what the person said, but I mean, I can't repeat. I can't exactly repeat what the person said. And then I ask them, what can you tell me what the person said? And instead of telling me what the person actually said, they tell me their interpretation of what a person said. And this interpretation is not just, okay, if it was just interpretation, but it's not just interpretation, it's their interpretation translating into their version of English. That's the problem. So when you prepare a speech, when you are getting ready for a presentation, that's not a big deal. But what people are really afraid of is what comes after the presentation. When people start asking questions, especially your top management, when they start asking questions, or your team leaders, like, what is this about? How did you come up with these ideas? Why do we have these numbers on the slides? Why do you think it's the right decision? Why didn't you mention this? when all this comes up, a person is lost because they were not ready for these questions. And the frustration comes from not being prepared, but people are even more frustrated if they didn't hear half of the questions. You know, they think they heard a question, but when they start answering, turns out that they missed half of the question. We work heavily on listening skills so that people are able to hear every single word and every single nuance of what people are saying. And when you start hearing all the words you didn't hear because you didn't know them or because you didn't pay attention to them before, you know, this usually leads to a person being curious about all these new words they suddenly started hearing, and they learn these new words, which leads to expanding their vocabulary, and that has a good impact on their presentation skills. So the 3 things that we work on when it comes to public speaking skills. Number 1, feeling comfortable with yourself, developing this inner state of confidence. Number 2 is working with that fear of going one level down. So when people have to understand that it's okay to speak in simple, plain language in English, because English is not Russian. English is very simple, it's very compact, and it's okay to make short sentences, and you better be making short sentences, and you better be very clear, because you don't even need to translate all your grand ideas from Russian into English. And thing number 3 is listening. When people hear everything they say, their perception of the conversation and their perception of the presentation changes 360 degrees. It's just a different world, believe me. So I have a list of skills that I think are crucial for non-native speakers to develop when it comes to public speaking. So when you train public speaking skills, to me personally, it has nothing to do with theater, drama, performance, acting. It has nothing to do with acting skills. Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of confusion, so I just want to clear this up for myself and for those people who are watching. Public speaking is not acting, especially in business. It's all about being sincere. It's about being able to connect with people on a very genuine level. And when you act, you cannot do that. I mean, when you act, you can connect with a person for one scene. But in business, you need to be able to connect consistently. And you need to be able to prove that you really mean what you say consistently from one meeting to another. You will have series of meetings. And I don't know anybody who was able to sell anything the first time they met a person if the person had no idea what they were selling and who this person is. Usually it takes several meetings to sell something, and I'm not talking about products. You can be selling your ideas, you can be selling equity, you can be selling your service, you can be selling yourself as a professional. Usually it takes several meetings. So when you act, your acting skills are not for one scene. You can persuade people in one scene, but when you learn how to speak, when you learn how to persuade, when you learn how to present your ideas, you'll learn to do it consistently, and you need to be able to do it consistently. And if you every time you need to pretend like you're someone else, it's not going to work out. Therefore, trying to apply an image of a successful public speaker to yourself doesn't really work, because you have to live with it. And if this image contradicts who you really are, you're not going to be able to sustain that image. So if you're watching this right now and you are working on your presentation skills in the English language, you might ask yourself, what is my ideal image of myself? How do I see myself presenting in the second language? Can you picture yourself? Can you see yourself on stage, or maybe in that room full of investors? Can you imagine yourself present in English? Try to describe that image to yourself. What do you see? What kind of person do you see? Is that person confident? Is that person loud? I don't know, maybe quiet. What is that person wearing? What are you wearing in your imagination? How do you walk? How do you talk? So build a very detailed image of yourself. How do you want to look? And how do you want other people to experience you, to perceive you when you present in English? Take a minute to think about it. And then ask yourself a very honest question. This image that you see, is it based on who you really are? Or is it based on your expectations of what a successful speaker is? It's very important to understand where is this distinction between I think this is right and I know this is me. This is another thing that leads to quite a lot of confusion. A lot of times people think that a successful public speaker, a successful presenter is someone who is always standing, someone who is always using their hands, someone who is always loud, someone who is overly enthusiastic, someone who has the energy, someone, that image of an extrovert, loud, enthusiastic, energetic speaker. And they believe this is the image they need to live up to in order to become a successful presenter. And very, very often, it's not what the person needs. Because when you learn about the person and when you learn what the person actually does, sometimes these people can be 10 times more powerful when they simply start speaking slower. When they go down with the pitch of their voice a little bit, when they listen more, when they make longer pauses, and when they finally stand still. I'm not saying that they don't have to move or you don't have to move as a presenter. You have to be able to feel comfortable in, walking, sitting, standing. It's really important to practice all that. But I'm just saying that this image that I think we're all used to, and this image that we all see everywhere of successful speakers, does not necessarily have to apply to you, because you might have a different job. Maybe your job is to, lead the team. Maybe your job is to convince the CFO to approve of investment. Maybe your job can be very different. Maybe your job is to influence the CEO and their decisions. I don't know. But being an energetic person jumping around and motivating everyone, let's go, is not always the right image. So coming back to the skills that I think every non-native speaker needs to develop when it comes to, needs to develop in order to master public speaking skills in the second language. Number one is simplicity. You need to understand that English language is very simple compared to Russian. Very compact, short sentences, active voice, and when you're able to express your ideas in the most simple way, that's very attractive, very sexy, and everybody gets it the first time you say it. The second skill is the skill of summarizing everything. When you're always ready to give a detailed version of whatever you are to present, and this brief version. Because the worst thing that can happen is when you walk into a meeting and the person says, look, I only have 10 minutes. Can we just have it, can we do this quickly? So what is that you wanted to talk about? And you were preparing for an hour meeting, and now the person is telling you that they only have 10 minutes and you don't know what to say. And what you're trying to do, you try to hurry and you try to fit that 1 hour presentation that you have prepared in the 10 minutes that you have right now. This is when disasters happen. You don't want to do that. So instead of trying to jam your presentation in the 10 minutes that you have, you want to be ready with a brief version of your presentation. Always have a detailed version and a brief version. And a lot of non-native speakers don't really know how to summarize, and they don't know when to shut up, because when you don't feel very confident in whatever you're saying, and when you don't know how to develop your idea, how to develop your thought and what to say next, and when you're not sure if the audience is following you, if they understand you or not, you feel this tension, and you feel that there are a lot of awkward moments and there are a lot of awkward pauses. And what you're trying to do, you try to fill that awkward silence, those awkward moments, with more words, with whatever words. You just try to say something to fill that void. And a better strategy is just to say nothing, to pause and to give yourself time to breathe, to think, take a break, whatever. But this is where it's coming from, so that people don't think that you have nothing to say and you say something just to avoid that opinion that someone might have about you. That's why learning to summarize gives people a lot of freedom. They feel way more confident because they can give a brief version, they can give a detailed version, they're ready. The skill of this inner confidence that I had been talking about. We worked for 5 weeks, and I tried to make sure that people are quite comfortable with themselves, with the way they look, with the way they talk, with the way they move, so that they don't have that fear of not being accepted by other people or being judged by other people, and especially by themselves. They're the first people who judge themselves. The next skill is being able to accept feedback, because in real life, nobody really gives you that feedback. Oh, your presentation, the beginning of your presentation was quite boring. I didn't really get what you said. Or when someone is given a long and rambling and confusing presentation, at the end of it, you go like, so what? What do you want me to do with this information now? It's still not clear what you wanted to achieve. And it's still not clear for me why I was giving you all my attention. When the person is unable to get to the point, it's quite disappointing for the audience. But the ability to accept feedback is something that we work hard on, because it's quite revelating, I would say. A lot of people do not notice how they manipulate other people with their words, with their intonation. They don't notice how they put a lot of pressure on people. They don't notice how they try to make decisions for people. And they don't notice. They do it because maybe they translate directly what they would have said in Russian, and in Russian that would work, but they would not work in English. Or because they truly don't understand that that the words now have a different intention. Or maybe because they have never even thought about their own intention. So we work on that. I simply show people what I feel and what other people feel when they say it. It's more important than the content, because your content might be great, awesome, an amazing presentation, brilliant design, the entire team helped you prepare it, flawless content. But the way you present it and the way you make people feel creates that tension. And because of that tension, people don't feel like they want to work with you. Simple. Then diction is another skill that we focus on. And a lot of non-native speakers don't really need to worry so much about their accent, but they need to work on their diction. Because the articulation organs work completely differently when we speak another language. And you really, in English especially, for a lot of Russian speakers, you need to learn to open your mouth a bit more to make all those sounds correct. Because if people struggle understanding you, that's a problem. People will lose you very easily if you give them a job to figure out what it is you're saying. So diction is important. Listening, absolutely. So that people are not afraid of spontaneous replies. They're not afraid of spontaneous questions. And if you hear every single word that a person said, if you hear it and if you're 100% sure that you heard it correctly, you're so much more confident in yourself and you're able to reply in a relaxed way. You don't hurry to reply. You're not afraid that you didn't understand something. You're not trying to translate something instantaneously in your mind, some word that you don't even remember. They said some word that you don't understand and you don't remember what that word was, but you still try to translate it. It's crazy, but people have this process running in their mind all the time, and it's just very frustrating. It creates a lot of unnecessary tension. So listening. We learn, not listening, like listening, yes, but we learn to hear every single word and we learn to understand every accent. Because if your colleagues come from Scotland, Australia, England, America, India, they all say the same words slightly differently. And if you're able to understand them fast, it's a huge benefit. And the last one is vocabulary. The reason why people come, the reason why people join my courses is that the level at which they present at the moment is not enough. Is not enough for an international conference, not enough maybe to get investment, is not enough to get a job that they want. It's simply not enough because they're aiming higher. And the reason why it's not enough right now is because they're using the vocabulary they already know. And therefore, it sounds the same. They repeat themselves and they feel that they're not growing. So in order to move to the next level, you definitely need better vocabulary. You need better vocabulary in order to summarize your ideas, in order to be able to express whatever you need to express or explain to your business partners in the most simple, brief, concise, and powerful way. Very often, for this, you need better vocabulary. A lot of non-native speakers will explain something in 1 or 2 sentences while there is one word that explains it. Because they don't know the word, they need 1 or 2 sentences to explain this idea. But actually there is one word that describes it. And I show the strategies that I use myself to expand my vocabulary, and I think they're the easiest. They stick, the new words stick, and I see other people get results, and it's very enjoyable. It's not like you have to sit down and learn new words. It's very enjoyable. So vocabulary, listening, diction, being able to accept feedback, inner state of confidence, summarizing, and simplicity. These are the skills that we focus on when we train public speaking skills in the second language. If you have any questions, just comment under the video and I'll try to save this live video and upload it on IGTV so you can come back to it and watch it anytime later.